Well, hello and welcome. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning here from the southern tip of Africa, Cape Town. You're with the BushWhisperer. And I'm sorry to tell you, but Chris won't be here today. We only discussed this last night as an idea. And yesterday, actually, I only put it up last night. And we didn't stop to consider whose Tuesday we were talking about, because it would be the evening for him and the morning for me, because we're on opposite sides of the world. So it's my Tuesday, it's his Monday. So yeah, it was a miscommunication and a miscalculation between the two of us. However, I still think it's a great topic. Am I lucid dreaming this reality into being? What a wonderful concept. I do think that it's very easy for us to get lost in the so-called objective reality of life. We like to think of the world as being objective. We like to think of everything as being finite and related to matter. But how much of this experience, of this journey through matter, is a conscious experience, a mental paradigm? How much of what we experience is what we think? In order to gain a little bit of insight into this, we can actually apply a little bit of what is considered science. And I take all science with a pinch of salt. Anybody with an intelligent mind should take science with a pinch of salt. I was taught this by a scientist when I was young. It was explained to me that science is a progressive journey. It is an opinion. It is a series of ideas that have been propagated as an explanation, and certain amounts of evidence has been found to support said ideas, notions. It's more the realm of philosophy than the realm of fact. Hence, you might notice that science is a continually shifting and adjusting paradigm. However, I think it's important for us to recognize and realize certain points. When we look at neurochemistry, we look at the nature of reality. There seems to be a dovetail in considering these ancient notions of dream time, which is a shamanic concept. You may have heard of it. It's the dreaming, the dream time, whether you're in Africa or Australia or South America or North America. The shaman all tend to agree that life is a cosmic dream, and that there are three different aspects of this fundamental dream that we can call the dreaming, the dream time. And neurochemistry has come to support these ideas, because now that we understand that we have these six senses, and yes, I speak of six senses and not five, because the apparatus of thought and the emotional condition is a sense, right? You can feel information, you can consider information, and the information that your mind produces is highly sensual on the mental plane. In fact, it's so sensual that it can affect our physical senses. If you don't believe this, take some of the medicines that are out there and understand what I'm talking about. The nature of reality is a very subjective phenomenon. It's not objective at all. We like to think that our state of reality is objective, and we like to normalize things and put things within a homogeneous sort of paradigm of this is what it is, this is what it should be. If it's not this, it's not working, it's not right. However, as children, we can all remember experiencing a highly subjective state of reality. And this highly subjective state of reality is actually related to extrasensory perception, which we now call extrasensory, because we've allowed our senses to become boxed into a finite paradigm of reality that we like to think of as objective, when actually the whole subjective nature of reality is what we're objectifying, which in itself is a subjective process. So let's take a look at reality. Let's take a look under the hood, as it were. So what do the scientists from neurochemistry suggest? They say that these six senses, all the information of these six senses, they have to run through the central mainframe of the brain, right, the cerebellum. They then have to go to the thalamus, which is conditioned and controlled by the pineal gland. This is then reprocessed. It's almost as if the language of the senses are reprogrammed and reorganized. The information is then transmitted to the parietal lobes, where a dream is fabricated. The dream fabrication is what we experience as our objective reality, which is a highly subjective process. This reality is then experienced retrospectively. It is between a fraction of a second and 4 seconds in the past. We're not living in the present. We're living in the past in this physical reality because it's a dream representation of reality that's been created in our parietal lobes. There's only one sense that doesn't have to be reorganized or recoded for the parietal lobes, and that's a sense of smell. This is why we use incense, right? This is why you may often see me on the round table, and I'm always burning my frankincense, my myrrh, my storax, and such resins. And my copal. I love my copal as well. There's a bit of a pineapple flavor there. And these have a way of affecting the endocannabinoid system, which is a buffer between the hormonal system and the neurological systems, the central nervous system, which is essentially the two different aspects of our experience. We can't pretend that our central nervous system is not being activated and triggered, as it were, by the activities of the hormones. And the hormones are responsible for the feelings, the emotions, that subjective arena of experience from which we can never escape. This causes us to actually recognize and realize that even science is a subjective pursuit. I want you to think about that for a moment. How does one consider science to be objective when the very nature of interpreting that science is done by human beings that have emotional conditioning, emotional states? And these emotional ideologies, conditions, states are obviously going to affect the rationale of the central nervous system. And in Indian Vedic systems of yoga, we have the Ida and the Pingala. And the Ida and the Pingala are essentially the two nadis. In the Kabbalah, we talk about the rising current and the falling current. Yeah, the pillar of mercy and the pillar of severity. And the pillar of mercy, we could relate that to the Ida, and the pillar of severity, we could relate that to the Pingala. And the Pingala is a solar emanation. We're talking about electrons. The Ida is a magnetic gravitational field. We could equate this to a hormonal system, in the same way that the central nervous system is electrical based. The sun is putting out all this energy, right? The pranic field is being emitted from the sun, according to the Vedic system. This means that all of the electrical and magnetic and gravitational displacement coming from the sun is fundamental for maintaining the electromagnetic field, the light that produces all the polarization, that causes all of this actualization of the event horizon to become an objectively experienced phenomena. However, our experience of this reality is essentially a dream that is manufactured in the parietal lobes. So that's where neuroscience starts to touch the cosmology and the philosophy of yoga, the cosmology and the philosophy of the Kabbalah. You can see it in the Tao as well. It's very interesting. If you look at the Tao, the alchemy of the Taoist system is fundamental. And they have the yang and the yin in this wonderful little cosmic symbol. And you can see the yang representing that dynamic, magnetic, emotional process that we can relate to the Ida. And we can consider the yin being that fundamental electrical emanation, and that we can relate to the Pingala. And that within the yang, there's the yin operating. Within the yin, there's the yang operating, which is sort of the way in which the electromagnetic spectrum produces the electronic and magnetic and gravitational field of light. I want you to think of light as being a gravitational field as well. It's very interesting because the electrical stimulation of all of the atoms is producing an energetic field. And there are many different forms of magnetism, by the way. When I speak of magnetism, I'm not just talking about ferrous. Go and take a look at this. There are a number of different forms of magnetism. I think there's at least 4. Very interesting when you look at it. There's paramagnetism as well. You know, water, fundamental. Water has some of these other qualities that can induce these fields. And obviously within the water, there are metals and there are electrolytes and salts, creating these ionic charge fields. This is why water can do things that other elements can't do. It's why the Taoists believe the water was fundamental. Why water is necessary to conduct the consciousness through the body. Why we have to drink water all the time. Why water is the source of life. Why life grows out of water. This is something that our science seems to be observing more and more. And the observation of phenomenon and the observation of stimuli and evidence of what's being experienced then is interpreted by a human being. And all of our sensual experience is tempered in the thalamus by our own emotional conditions. It's really important to understand this. So our emotional states will affect the way that we A, experience reality, B, the way that we interpret reality, and C, our fundamental concept related to the experience and interpretation of reality will be tempered by our emotional state. So there's no such thing as an objective anything. I was having this conversation in a lucid dreaming group. I have been. And there's this there's this person. Oh my gosh, what did they say? It is probably one of the funniest and most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my entire life. It's so ridiculous. I'm going to read it to you. Just because some things have to. Okay. So I was pointing out that when it comes to lucid dreaming is not an objective phenomenon. It's not an objective thing. It's totally subjective. And they're like, no, it's not. Lucidity is a gradient status, but it's not subjective at all. Lucidity is a gradient status, but it's not subjective at all. There's this Clorox bleach nonsense. Someone's been drinking too much Clorox bleach basically. Never drink Clorox bleach. It's bad for you. It toxifies your brain. It causes psychological damage and poisons your system in the most indecent of fashions. But these notions are out there, and I see these kind of conversations coming up. You know, people have read the so-called books of science, right? The so-called science on the matter. And they believe themselves validated in creating these ideas. And I'm very open to different perceptions. I'm very open to different ideologies and philosophies. But when it comes to total nonsense, I start to go, hold on. Why are people just playing with words? What is it that people are trying to get across here? You know, gradient of lucidity that's objective. I think it's important to recognize, and we see this represented in the Vedic cosmology and the schools of thought as well. When we speak about the Maya, what is the Maya? Well, the Maya is essentially dreamtime that the Aborigines are speaking about, that the South American shaman, the American shaman are talking about the dreaming. And we have similar concepts here. South Africa, we've got the Inyamas, the Zangomas, the Utlaichas. These are all different kinds of local shaman here. And the concept that reality is very much a dream is as old as society, as civilization itself, it seems to be. So we have this Vedic concept of the Maya. And the Maya basically means Ma. Okay, break down the words. Ma means mother. This is a syllable which relates to the fundamental resonant chamber, the resonant frequency. So the electromagnetic field is a wavelength. Now we like to draw a wavelength as a flat little worm, but you've got to consider it as a toric field that's oscillating, which means it's like a heart. Okay, like a heart. Think about it. So you've got this oscillating resonant field like this, and beating like a heart, very much like a heart. And then we draw it as a flat worm, like a break dancer, you know. And this resonating field is obviously producing two extremities. It's coming into phase, it's coming out of phase. So essentially, what we're experiencing as reality is here, then it's not here. It's here, then it's not here. It's here, then it's not there. You've heard terms like antimatter being discussed in physics. This is what we're talking about. Matter, antimatter, matter, antimatter, matter. But it's happening really fast. I don't know the bit rate, speed of reality, but I think it might be around the range of 144,000 or 140,000, 80,000. It could be anything between that. I'm not sure. I've seen different numbers being proposed. However, it's a very fast rate. And I know this because I drowned when I was little. And don't try drowning at home. It's not fun. After all of it's the most painful experience you can ever have in your life. So, try and avoid it and stay safe. After going through the experience of the trauma, and the little gland in the brain squirts out. Namaste, dear Lauren. How are you doing, my dear? I hope you're well. I hope you're having an absolutely great day. I'm sorry Chris isn't here. I did explain that it was a miscommunication between us of Tuesday. It's still Monday for him, and it's Tuesday for me. We didn't check this detail with each other. Lastminute.com, this is what happens, but lastminute.com is where all the excitement is. That's great, man. That's great. That's great. So this concept of this bit rate of reality coming into being, popping out of being, coming into being, was described by the ancient Vedic sages as Maya. Ma, that resonance, that oscillating vibrational field that we can equate to sound. This is why we hear Om being the fundamental concept behind light. And yeah, man, we're on the other side of the world. On the other side of the world. So this resonant frequency is what we can equate to the word of God, right? In the Bible, first there was the word, then there was light. The Vedic idea is similar. There was Om. From Om came light. So this resonant on and off bitrate frequency of the universe, matter, antimatter, matter, antimatter, is producing acoustic fields. And these acoustic fields produce a cymatic response. The high energy resonance. Namaste, dear Anna. How are you? I hope you're having a lovely morning tea. Back in the UKKK. I hope it's not too cold as well out that side of the world. So this bit rate of the resonant field of the Ma, the divine feminine, is creating such high energetic release that we experience heat and light from this. And this concentration of this energy, this life force power, we see it in the sun. Hence, from the sun comes all of the light, which is produced by this Om sensation, which is this high frequency resonance. And when you leave your body one day and you decide, done with the flesh puppet, going to hang it up, got places to go, things to do, people to meet, then you will notice this resonant frequency, the sound, it's loud. And the further you travel from matter and the more you start to forget the personal context of life and the players in your play, oh my gosh, that's the scary part. You have to forget all the people you know and love. Then, and as adults, I'm pretty sure we've got to remember all the things we've done that we weren't proud of. That's the ouch part. And this frequency gets faster and louder and faster and louder until we realize that the entire universe is just this vibrational sound field. And it's on, off, on, off, on, off. Namaste, dear Vincent. How are you doing? You're good, man. How's life? Yeah, the tetragrammaton is essentially what we're talking about, right? This on-off resonant frequencies, which is the source of all sound, which is the source of all vibration. And there's different ways of understanding and conceptualizing this field. And so we consider this field as having, polarities of masculine and feminine being expressed within. You look at the Tao, you have the yang within the yin and the yin within the yang. And then you have the yang and the yin interacting. And then you have the yin within the yang interacting with the yang within the yin. And you have the yang within the yang interacting with the yin within the yin. Yeah. And then you have the yang yin within the yin reacting with the yin yang within the yang. You see, there are 4 things happening, right? Yut, he, vav, he. 4 things happening. And in this consummation of these 4 things happening, you have the 5th principle. The 5th principle, yeah? Coming into being, the 5 elements of the Tao. And the 5th principle becomes that resonant name, that frequency that maintains the substratum, the structure of reality. Now, this reality is experienced subjectively. And the subjective recognition of this experience is what causes it to become dream time. We see this reflected in the Kabbalah as well as in the shamanic path, right? This is why you have Atzilut being reality as it is, Bria being that emotional conditioning of this reality, which is that subjective take of reality. Then we have our reaction, the Yetzirak, reaction to the emotional conditioning of receiving this absolute reality. And that reaction then becomes a creative response of the consciousness field within that personal id, the will, is becoming activated in this process. And these 3 processes become homogenized in a substrate. And that substrate then becomes a fundamental anchor that can hold the other 3 principles. And so we see in Ishia, we see the Guf, the Malkut, where we have the cross within the center with the 4 colors, yeah, representing the predominance of these other 3 principles bound within the dark color, the black color, which represents this homogenization of the vibrational field, bringing everything back together like a glue, if you would. And there we have the citrine, the russet, and the olive, representing the 3 principles as they've been homogenized into the substratum glue, these 4 principles coming together in one. We see this reflected in the Tao. We see this reflected in the Yan Yin. So these fundamental concepts, the number 4 being so important to ancient Egyptian, hence they built their pyramids based upon the number 4. Number 4 was sacred to the land of Kim. And it relates to the structuring of the state of reality. And then the 5th principle comes into being, which is our human reaction. This human reaction, right? Like you look at the front of your face. How many holes have you got? 5. Interesting. 5 holes in the front of the face, 5 fingers, 5 fundamental limbs, right? Got to consider the head's a limb. It can move, it can do something. In martial arts, the head is very much a limb. It's a weapon. Good old, I used to break wood. There's a ridge here. There's a crown where you can break wood. When I was a child, I used to do these exhibitions for my school, and go into malls and break wood and smash wood and have wood broken all over my body. So the head is very much a limb. We don't consider it as a limb, but it is. So when we consider all of these principles, this means that these 4 fundamental takes of reality are homogenized by the 5th principle, where it is coming together, and this experience by the parietal lobes is being sculpted by the pineal gland's activity in the thalamus, acting as a filter. And the hypothalamus, which is conducting the sense of smell directly, becomes that feminine take of reality. Hence your memory, the memory, is bound by smell. So, yeah, another appendage. Very much another appendage. And so, we look at this and we see like there's definitely this nature of reality being expressed here. And we're sort of trapped within our own perceptions of reality. So the label of this discussion, the idea behind it is, am I lucid dreaming this reality? And that's a little bit of a, it's almost a play on words, really. Because lucid dreaming means that you're aware of the dream, right? To be dreaming is to be conceptually unaware, but experiencing. To be lucid dreaming means that you are conceptually aware of this experience, which is a highly subjective experience. And so I think we don't realize how subjective reality is. We like to think of reality as being fixed. What we also don't realize, and this is nothing that neurochemistry has actually shown us, is that much of what we think we're seeing and observing through the senses are memories. The neural capacity to process information is slow. Some of reality takes 4 seconds to process, but a lot of what we're experiencing is less than 4 seconds. We're experiencing between fractions of a second and 2, 3 to 4 seconds in the past. That has got to do with the brain processing information, because the senses have got to go through the hormonal state, they've got to go through the neurological state, they've got to go to the parietal lobes, they've got to be processed, they've got to go create this fundamental experience of a dream. We've then got to project this into our consciousness and use these senses as a basis to sculpt this proverbial dream of reality that we're experiencing. And this takes time. It takes time for all of this to happen. There's literally cables in the body with little electrical impulses running through them, frequencies and bit rates and hormonal fluctuations as a response. And there's a lot going on in the brain and in the hormonal system for reality to be processed. It takes time. So this is meaning that our fundamental reality is an echo of reality. This is what we're talking about when we talk about, the 4 worlds of the Kabbalah, or the 3 worlds of the shaman. The 3 worlds of the shaman are Atzilut, Bria, and Yetzirah. They consider the fundamental dream time that we're living in to be a conglomeration of those 3 fundamental dream time zones. So I think it's important for us to recognize and realize the way that this works, the way in which the consciousness field is being projected into the physical body, and how much of this is a fundamental dream. And then we start looking at extrasensory perception, psychic phenomenon, psychic reality. I heard the same Clorox bleach vomiting nonsense in the lucid dreaming group, trying to say that there's no such thing as people having shared dream experiences, which is absolute nonsense. I've had it. If you want to hear about these experiences, I'm doing a show with Jeremy, BushWhisperer and Tall Tree Show. It's in my channel. Go and take a look there in the YouTube. You'll find it, where we're basically doing a whole series of talks. I think we must be on episode 8 by now. Wow. Basically, where I'm just talking openly about my life and how does one become a shaman? Where does this come from? And it was Jeremy's idea to interview me. He was curious, so we started this conversation. We were like, well, let's stick it online, and we did. And so it's become a show in itself. And I love talking with Jeremy. He's really lovely. He's very down to earth. He's very grounded. He reminds me of one of my old, long lost friends. Rest in peace, dear Alex, who had this rational and grounded perspective that was always refreshing. So yeah, let me ask this, is random, but have you ever heard of someone regrowing their thyroid gland after they had theirs removed? That's a really interesting question, Lauren. I can't say that I've specifically heard of that, but I have heard of crazy stuff. I've heard of people regrowing teeth. So, if we can regrow teeth, what can we not regrow? I think that the potentials within the stem cells to differentiate and repopulate must be dependent upon the programming of the stem cells within the body. And so I'm not one to I've just posted another episode actually last night, and I've got a whole lot of episodes. They're going to be coming long and hard and fast now. I was waiting for this constellation of these planets to pass that passed last week or just over a week ago. Wow, intense energy. I knew it was going to affect me. I twisted my ankle and I got a throat infection. I never get sick, ever. Touch wood. And the one time I get is after that constellation, those 6 planets in a line. Very powerful energy. So these resonant fields of consciousness are being affected by reality around us. We are totally subject to reality. We like to think of ourselves as objective. But when it comes to the regrowing of these glands, honestly, the way I see it, and don't quote me on this because I'm not a doctor or a scientist to say that this is a fact, but I don't believe that facts exist either. You see, diagnosis. Gnosis is an inner passage of knowledge and experience, wisdom. A diagnosis is the kind of knowledge from inside that can do you harm. So I'm not big on diagnosis. You see, so however, that being said, disclaimer put out there and opinion facilitated, I do notice and believe that this reality is an oscillating reality. And it seems that organic matter and molecules are shaped by resonant frequencies. And so the cymatic resonant frequencies shape the space where the molecules get grown. So the cymatics is a resonant frequency, and this is the frequency of consciousness. So I believe that all things are possible. I mean, I have seen things, I have experienced things. I wouldn't say that I do things, but things happen through me that are unexplainable. And I've experienced it with other people. I've seen and experienced things with other people as well. And then, of course, I've heard of other experiences from people I've considered credible, highly advanced people as well. I lived in ashrams for big chunks of my life. And so I was around powerful people who had spiritual knowledge and experience as well. And my own experience of reality is like literally, wow. I think like just about anything's possible. Personally, I think we are being living in a cage of our shell, of our skull cap, and our skull caps keeps a cap on what can and cannot be. And so our limit of experience is based upon our beliefs and our ideologies and our ideas. And so I think that as children, we don't have our skull caps on. So we have a more lucid potential to interact with reality, which is why we heal faster as children, which is why our stem cells are more active as children. So become more childlike, go back into that imaginative world that we were told is childish. You must grow up. You must grow up and be mature in this world. You must be adulterated. Your consciousness must be adulterated. It cannot be pure. When the consciousness is pure, it becomes childlike. We're talking about the Christos. We're talking about the whole basis of religion, right? Be as a child so you can transmit the wisdom of the divine. So this notion of the purity of the child within, the inner child, I think can have a powerful programming effect on the oscillations of the cymatic resonant field of consciousness that is organizing the molecules of the body through the processes of the hormones, which then become extended through the amino chains. And these amino chains then become the substance that fill the gaps produced by the cymatic resonant frequencies. And so, being and living in the flow, it's a beautiful way of putting it. I love that concept, It's like being in the ocean. You got to move with the ocean. But when you become one with the ocean, you are one with the ocean. You can climb on top of a wave. You can ride that wave. You can get right inside of a tube. If you've ever been in the tube of a wave, it's a ride, man. The sound. You can hear the water all around you, and you feel like you're encased within a wave, and the hole gets smaller and smaller. Sometimes she swallows you. If you've ever been swallowed in the tube of a wave, it's called a washing machine. It's a little bit scary because you go round and 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 round. You got to like roll up in a ball and just concentrate. Keep your focus on your breath so that you don't think, because thinking uses oxygen. Here's an interesting point with regards to the nature of reality: the burning of oxygen. Now, this is really important. So any of you that are long distance runners and do sport, Yeah, Lauren, you definitely have not let go of your inner child. That's why you're so beautifully creative and artistic. And, I think that the human body has the potential to heal and adapt. It's what I've seen. Bruce Lee had his back broken in a fight, and he was told he'll never walk again. And he would not accept it. And while he was in his hospital bed, he developed a new form of martial arts called Jeet Kune Do. That Jeet Kune Do that he developed became what was interpreted by other fighters he trained to become MMA, mixed martial arts. Interesting concept. And not only did he manage to get off that hospital bed and heal his spine with his chi, he then became a prominent fighter. We think of Bruce Lee as an actor. We don't realize that he stood amidst all the top fighters of the world from all different categories of fighting, all different types of martial arts. And he got into a ring and he said, I will take any man in this room. And we're talking about the heavyweights of the world. A room with 100 fighters in it. I will take any man in this room within 60 seconds. And a couple of them tried. None of them stood a chance against him. Because his new fighting style was supremo. It involved the art of fighting without fighting. Being like a child. Activating that inner child adventure. Weird concept when it comes to like martial arts. But something quite fundamental to how you can liberate your chi. How you can liberate that fundamental life force. What they call the prana in the Vedic cosmology. And this field of energy that sustains the physical body, it's the etheric fluids that run through the body, can be focused, and the focus of these etheric fluids can change resonant frequencies of cymatics. And so this is where we're talking about this pineal gland and the potential of the human body to adjust and to be able to regrow parts that are damaged, to be able to we've heard of people regrowing teeth. What a concept. But these things have happened. And it's interesting. There are places in the world where there are tribes that climb a big tree with a beehive, and they get stung by hundreds of bees. Hundreds of bee stings. They get the honey to climb down the tree. We're talking enough bee stings to put 10 people in a grave, potentially. 10. They don't even miss a meal. They don't even get nauseous. So like the body's ability to adapt is incredible. Incredible. That's my take. And so getting back to this idea of dream time, the Maya being facilitated by the palatal lobes as a subjective experience of what seems to be an objective manifestation of experience. And I say seems to be. Bee sting therapy. Yeah, I've only been stung by a bee a few times, and I've been very surprised. It doesn't hurt much. And I've never like harmed a bee because I love bees. But like in the UK, there used to be so many bees, and sometimes you're walking on the grass barefoot and you accidentally stand on bees. Or sometimes you're sitting on a couch and there's bees around and you accidentally squash one with your arm and you go, oh my gosh, what's this? And there's a bee stuck in your arm and you pull it out. You accidentally hurt a bee. I've been stung and I've just been like, interesting. Like it doesn't seem to affect me. I think I'm very good with snake venom because ever since I was a child, I used to be drawn to snakes. And, the lucid experience of life. I had this thing as a child that I'd be walking and I'd walk past a field and I'd stop and other children would look at me and I'd be like this. And I'd run like a beeline to a certain part in a field and I'd stick my hand in the grass and out comes a snake. And I caught all the snakes in my neighborhood. I must add, like at some points, like 12, 13, 14 snakes in my bedroom. My poor mother drove her up the wall. But I used to be able to find a snake. If I came to your house as a child and I went into your garden, I'd tell you there was a snake in the garden and you'd laugh. And I'd go find it and bring it out and show you. And people would be like, happened frequently. People be shocked, like, I have a snake in my garden. Like, yeah, it's normal. South Africa, we got snakes everywhere. Didn't you know it? So, I mean, those were the old days. I don't know. People use all sorts of chemical poisons and fertilizers. Spiders, yeah, spiders are drawn to me too. I've learned to coexist with spiders. I've learned to build relationships with spiders. I've learned to love spiders. I let big ones, I mean big spiders that'll cover my hand, come and live in my home with me. Like they set up shop above my bed on the ceiling, and I like look at them when I'm falling asleep. Just hoping they don't go over my face in the night, because I'm a little bit scared of these things crawling on my face when I'm sleeping. I got bitten by a spider a while ago. It was, yeah, in my sleep. I must have brushed it off my face, and it obviously bit me. Yeah. And I had like a bit of a spider bite there for a while, but that was it. But yeah, the nature of reality being an expression of dream time is really fundamental and really sort of the key. Snake whisperer. Yeah, I am a bit of a snake whisperer. Snake's one of my powerful totems. In fact, becoming a shaman, one of the points of initiation was for me to connect with a big snake. I mean, big snake. Yeah. I'm talking 7 meters. You know, I'm talking like 20 feet. In my arms, hugging my snake. She's wrapping herself around me and she's kissing me on the lips. She's a big snake, yeah? Big. Her head's like this. And she kissed me, and her tongue went right through my mouth and touched my tongue. And when her tongue touched my tongue, there was this like psychedelia. That's all I'm going to say. Wow. I was like, whoo, she's given me a hit of something. Wow. Obviously, I never had any substances, right? I was practicing meditation and fasting and practicing silence, living barefoot in the jungles. But her kiss on my tongue caused a reaction in my brain. DMT, very powerful experience. So I've got a very strong connection with snakes. Love snakes. And welcome, Sinana Abzu Enki. Batman. Wow. Bats are cool. They're interesting. Hey, the sounds. They make these tiny little clicking sounds. You can hear them. I don't know if it's sub audio or what it is. Bats are really interesting. Yeah, they definitely are. Hey, Big Gaz, how are you? I need to know, are you them? I am me. I'm only me, Gaz. I'm just me. Just plain old me who likes to pretend that me is I, and that I is me, another version of you, another reflection of us, the extension of we, who, for those that don't know us, consider us to be them. Another you in another body within me is the reflection of the central identity of what I see. We're all one. Something like that, I believe. So, yeah, yeah, snake kiss. So this reality is very much a dream. That's what I mean. You hold a big snake in your arms, something that can squeeze the life out of you, and surrender, and connect with the consciousness of this being. Forge a telepathic communication with this being. In order to get to that point of the being, you've got to meditate and you've got to call the being out from the wild. She has to come to you, and you need to call her. And then you need to be without any fear. And when she comes and wraps herself around you, there is no time for fear. There's just time to be now, and to be embedded within this experience, and to allow the natural process of the thalamus to want to change reality based on our emotional states. You bypass that by transcending your own personal feelings. And the fastest way to do this in shamanism, okay, shamanism isn't for everybody, but you put yourself in extreme danger sometimes. And when you're in an extreme state of danger, There is no time to think. You just have to be. And where fear can be the end of your life, where fear can be the end of your life, you have no choice but to let go of all of the emotions. And so they just rise out of your consciousness, because you go beyond fear. Once you go beyond the fear of not being alive, then what is there? Think about it emotionally. What is there? That's the basic, the plug that plugs us in. Yeah, exactly. All is self fundamentally. So I do think that we don't realize how subjective our experience of reality is. And this Maya is the fundamental dream time. This dream time that we're swimming through, that's being encoded within our so-called objective experience. And this experience created by the parietal lobes, which is then run through the circuitry of the brain and processed as reality. It starts as an extra dimensional experience. So I speak of the etheric field and the astral field, and that consciousness is basically resonating through the causal field to produce the emotional context, the astral field. And the emotional context then projects within the mental principle field where the thoughts are happening, the etheric field. And this becomes like a bubble around the physical body that it projects this into, and runs it through all the cables and hormonal systems in the body in order to produce a more scaled down version of the etheric reality, which is a scaled down version of the astral reality, which is a scaled down version of the causal reality. That means we're living in a 4D reality here. The etheric field is a 5D reality. The astral field is a 6D reality, and the causal field is a 7D reality. But those people that speak 7, 5, 4, 8, they talk nonsense, because they think of reality as being 3D. Reality is not 3D. Reality is 3 dimensions perceived from the 4th dimension of time. So time is a dimension that holds these 3 dimensions. And time is a dimension that is held within the dimension of conceptual reality, which is bound within a dimension of that which we experience as an emotional contextual reality. And that contextual 6th dimensional reality is bound within a absolute reality, which is that part of the soul that moves beyond incarnation to incarnation to incarnation. And in order for the soul to take form, it has to project into an astral body. It needs to form an astral body through cymatics, and the astral body then through cymatics needs to form an etheric body, and the etheric body through cymatics needs to form a physical body, and it does this in a womb. And the womb has to happen inside the Maya, right? Ma, that divine feminine. The divine feminine gives the bowl or the womb space for the cymatic principles to come into being, and for the hormones to develop in order to grow the molecules within the resonant frequency chamber of the oscillating vibrational field of consciousness. So the nature of this reality being a dream, to me, is just how I always consider it. It's a highly shamanic concept. And he wants your truth. If he didn't, he wouldn't be here. Big love, guys. Big love. We're all here on this adventure of truth. And truth is a relativity. I always see truth as a many-faceted gem. I look at truth and I consider it as being like a gem with many sides. And depending on which side of the gem you are perceptually, you're going to get a different reflection of truth. And that perception of that truth from that gem is only relevant while you're at that point of reference. But we are moving in a spiral. So our reference to this gem of truth is in a constant state of flux. So the very nature of truth is a process of evolution. That's how I think of it. And this is why knowledge, I don't believe, can be recorded in books. Because the moment you record knowledge in books, it becomes a belief. And the interpretation of the other person reading that book, their reality is based upon their parietal lobes being manipulated by their pineal gland, which is being manipulated by their moods and their feelings, the pituitary gland, once again a subjective experience, and their subjective take from the expression of knowledge that I'm experiencing through the medium of writing and books becomes a subjectivized objective reality. And so it becomes split. And in the splitting, it has to reform, and it reforms in a different way. And so it becomes a belief because it's no longer the fact. The only gateway towards actual truth, from my perspective, my opinion, is the realm of personal experience. And that is to do with like, the fundamental. We've all got to go through our process. That's life. Life is this process that's got us. It's got us pinned down. Back in the middle with you. Life is what's happening while we are imagining ourselves. What a concept. Think about that for a moment. So we're imagining who we think we are. But are we who we think we are? Are we who we imagine ourselves to be? How much of our personal experience is really just the imagination? How much of our personal experience is just conceptual? How much of it is just let me turn off my volume. That's my beautiful queen. My beautiful queen, I think. I saw my beautiful queen's she's busy working and doing things, and her day. I know she's very busy at the moment. Otherwise, I imagine she would have been here. So yeah, the nature of this. Sorry, I zoned out for a moment thinking about my love. I'm very lucky to be in a solid and grounding relationship with a very solid and grounding, authentic and honest, beautiful human being. So that's what life's about, to get back to reality, to recognize how subjective this reality is, and to find another person. Love is the key. I think love is what is the bridge between the subjective and the objective, from my perspective. You passed away in a dream, dear Gaz. Yeah, man. Wow, there's definitely something very euphoric about passing out of the flesh. That's all I can say. It's the most euphoric experience I've ever had in my life when it's happened. And I've also had it in, initiatory experiences where you no longer alive. You're pretty sure you're never going to be alive on the body again, and then you're reborn, literally reborn. You're like, wow, I'm reborn. I'm alive. You're not quite the same. So there's definitely this powerful euphoria that has within it this essence of peace that is completely intangible. And I think it sort of epitomizes what I'm trying to articulate here, possibly not so articulately, is that the notion of this dream time and Maya, that we're living in a fundamental dream, and that everything that we experience is dreaming. And so, am I lucid dreaming this world into being? Like, we consider ourselves to be lucid within the dream of reality, right? But are we lucid? How much of our lucidity is a subjective experience? And this is a very interesting concept, because now we're breaking into the realms of free will. What is free will? What is the dynamic expression of the will? Is free will a real thing? I mean, I believe free will is a real thing because I can experience it. But how much of that free will is affected by our own subjective bias, by our emotional states and our preconceived, programmed worldview, ideologies, belief structures, and patterns of conditioning from the past that are bound related by this continual flow of feelings and moods and emotions? And so when we start to look at this, we start to recognize and realize, wow, this free will seems like I'm totally in control. It seems like I'm totally lucid. And wow, you dreamt you got shot. Wow, that's not a nice dream, dear Lauren. Doesn't sound like fun. Hello, dear beautiful Mexico. I was just thinking about you. Just thinking about you. I hope your morning is going well. Back in the other side of Cape Town. Yeah. So love, like I was saying, I think that's the union point between the subjective and the objective states of consciousness, and this dream time, this Maya, this resonating chamber of consciousness that is producing the cymatic fields of molecules that we experience as a physical form, through which these hormones and electrical impulses can maintain and manage our state of reality in this so-called objective experience, which is a total subjective process. So how lucid are we in this dream time? How much of what we think we are shadows of what we used to be? And how much of what we used to be are reflections of what we wanted to be? And how much of what we wanted to be are just the seed emanations of the conditioning from whence we had come? So it's like a very interesting concept, sort of like when you're drawing a picture, right? Or you're writing a song. Your next chord depends upon your last chord. Where your pencil's going to go next will depend upon where it's come from. And so every time it moves forward, there's a certain number of possibilities it can go. And it's continually a finite potential. And your dream was different in the 2000s. That's a very interesting concept, Lauren. The way our dream time evolves and the way our dreams move. And the more lucid we become in reality, here we're getting into the lucid dreaming part of the story. The more lucid we become in reality, right? The more lucid we become in our dreams. The more lucid we become in our dreams, the more lucid we become in reality. But what is lucidity? Let's look at lucidity. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about, Lauren. I don't have I'm lying in my bed sleeping, and I'm aware that my body is in my bed sleeping, and that I'm experiencing this thought, and this thought becomes like images and pictures and concepts and people and communications and all sorts of stuff. But part of me is aware that I'm lying in my bed. Part of me is aware that I'm sleeping. And part of me is aware that there's this mental information being processed, but that the mental information being processed is actually not happening here. It's happening a little bit elsewhere. And that I'm this sort of node of interaction with all this information. Very interesting how our dream time and our sleep starts to become affected the more lucid we become in life. And so I completely get what you're talking about, Lauren, when you say that. Like I'm with you. And I do think like you're a body spirit pulled through a completely ordained experience as like training wheels. Yeah, well, this is sort of what I'm getting at to a certain extent, the nature of reality, how much is scripted, and that's this topic. This was supposed to be Chris and myself, by the way. I don't know if the rest of you know this. I was saying it earlier on, but Chris and I had a miscommunication, and I'll put my hand up because he was like, "Let's do it on Tuesday." I was like, "Yeah, Tuesday is cool. Wow, that's tomorrow." And so I sorted it out. My Tuesday. I never asked Chris what he meant. His Tuesday or my Tuesday? And his Tuesday, because he's in California, is yet to happen. It's still Monday for him. So yeah, Chris is going to be here tomorrow, and we'll be doing another session tomorrow. But yeah, so this nature of reality, this Maya, this experience of dream time, this experience of consciousness as an evolving paradigm, is something that is highly subjective. And in the world of dreaming, I think there's so much revelation, so much experience that we can tap into in our unconscious when we're in the dream state, because we are no longer objectifying everything. We're allowing ourselves to recognize the subjectivity to this experience, and we're subjective to this experience of reality. And so there's something very profound in surrender. We as human beings, we struggle to surrender. And as human beings, we struggle to surrender. We really do. We find it very difficult to just let go and to just be, because we're continually being pinned down by our ideologies and our expectations. Mehiko, you ask about Tall Tree. I need to get on Tall Tree's case. Tall Tree and I did a session on Sunday, 2 days ago. And there's a Tall Tree posted last night on my channel. The next installment, part 4, is up. And part 5 is going to be coming up next week as well, and part 6. So we're going to be running all the Tall Tree discussions. That alignment of 6 planets has passed. I'm finished twisting my ankle. I finished with my throat infection. I'm ready to move on to the next chapter. I felt there was going to be a reaction from my energetic system to the adjustment of the planetary energies. And that brings us to an interesting point. Planetary energies, resonant frequencies of light, lucidity, Lucy. Lucy means light, right? So id, what is id? Your id is your impulsive body of desires. It's an unconscious driving force that is continually seeking some form of self-actualization. And very often it relates to our deep desires and our instinctual impulses based upon the habitual rolling of the desire wheel in our consciousness field. Id. It's a term that used to be used by Jung and Freud and all of those lot. So lucid, the light that is dynamically programming the id. And light thus represents the awareness and consciousness, but it also represents the electrical impulses running through the brain, because electricity is an expression of light. And light is electromagnetic, so it has a magnetic component too, hence it causes the polarization principles. So hence the diamagnetic element of water. Water can do all sorts of cool, crazy stuff because it's got all these elements in it. And all these electrolytes, metals, and salts. So forging particular ionic bonds, and electrically it has a certain kind of a charge to it. And the way that it discharges and dissipates and expresses electricity is rather interesting too. So yeah, when we consider lucidity, it has to do with the light of consciousness. Now, the light of consciousness, we have to talk about enlightenment. So I'll give you my take on enlightenment if you're ready. Okay. There's nothing metaphorical about enlightenment at all. My take on enlightenment is it's simple, and I'll try and not drab on for too long. But you've got a pineal gland attached to the thalamus. You've got a pituitary gland attached to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland is secreting a white milk that runs over the top of the spongy material of the brain, and it lands on the pineal gland. The pineal gland is then supercharged by the white milky discharge expressed by the thalamus and the pituitary gland. It then creates its own discharge from the thalamus and the pineal gland, which thus moves through the claustrum, not the colostrum, but the claustrum, which is like a little keyhole vacuum in the center of the head. It moves through that and it starts to channel down. And both of these two discharges then separate and they move down either side of the spine. They cross the vagus nerve, an important point in the body, and there are 33 nodes where they move, nadi ba nadi ba nadi ba nadi, down the spine. Another important place they cross is the soul of power, what we call the triple burner, our body of instinctual expression, right? Fight or flight is controlled by the triple burner. Very important organ in the body. Taoist Chinese medicine always focus on that triple burner. It connects the heart to the gut, to the head. Action. Probably dopamine's got a lot to do with the actions and movement of the triple burner. I think it can stimulate dopamine in a big way. So it moves through the triple burner, and then it gets down to the sacral plexus, where it also crosses the nervous system. So these 3 points of crossing the nervous system are fundamental. These juices then rise back up. When they go back up past these 3 points, cross the vagus nerve again, and go through the claustrum, they are then taken up into the gray matter of the brain, where this fluid, which is a living etheric fluid, it stops being alive for about 72 hours. Is it 72 hours? No, sorry. I think it's 60 hours. 60 hours. For 60 hours, it stops being alive, and then it kickstarts again. It is reborn. Literally, the cells become regenerated, and in the process, it regenerates the gray matter of the brains, the place where those all important stem cells are, is stimulated by this process, and thus renewing our age and our body so that we can live for long. So this is like the elixir of immortality. The awakening of the Kundalini is what we're talking about here, with different terminology. And the Christos is that anointed oil. Once it has reached the crown chakra, activated the gray matter, stimulated the pineal and the pituitary glands. Now, the pineal gland has within it these triangular cells that have a hard, glassy kind of a wall that are piezoelectric in nature. They are stimulating electricity, creating electricity, and stimulated by electricity, like those cells that you have in fish under the water that can make light, or stingray, for example. So these cells are found in the pineal gland. They're also found in the retina of the eye. So the eyes, light affecting the melatonin is through this entanglement process between the cells in the eyes and the cells in the pineal gland. The only 2 parts in the body where these cells are found. Thus, there's actually a stimulation by the light touching the eyes, Lucy light, to the lucidity, the activity of the pineal gland. And when the pineal gland is activated by the electrical field through the eyes, what we look at, what we experience, the light touching the eyes, sunrise, so important, then the light produced within the thalamus by the pineal gland is able to light up the inside of the head. So we literally have light within our heads, like fish. You know, like fish under the sea, we've got light inside our heads. Have you not noticed sometimes when you look at someone's eyes, they've got light coming out of their eyes? People's eyes are well lit. The whole idea of people having bright eyes and light coming out of their eyes, that's literally, there's light inside their heads, and you can sense that light. It used to be depicted by the sages, or around the sages and the saints in ancient times, as being a halo around the head. So this enlightenment isn't a metaphor, it's not an idea, it's not a concept, it's literally light inside the head. So why are we revisiting this? Lucidity in the dream state has got to do with the amount of light being generated by the pineal gland. And the more light the pineal gland is generating, the more light will touch the hypothalamus and activate the pituitary gland, which will thus condition the hormones. And love is the most altruistic of the expressions of moods and emotional conditions that we can embrace as humans. So when we are in a state of harmony and well-being, joy, peace, and love are a natural feeling, natural state of being. And so this love then becomes that powerful current of that kundalini, that snake coming over the head, as the ancient Egyptians, right? They were protected by this asp, by this snake head. You see the same thing with Shiva in some of the depictions. Same thing with Buddha, with the kundalini, the snake, covering him when there was a great storm, protecting him. This love is the most powerful resonant frequency in the universe. It's the most powerful current that there is. It can change the nature of reality. It can change our experience. It can drive our connections with each other. It can bring us together. It can bring about peace. It can bring about society. Think about why civilization exists. Because people wanted to work together. They weren't working against each other. They weren't competing against each other. It wasn't like natural selection and competition that caused us to work together. It was love. It was caring for our children. It was caring for our families. It was caring about the other members of our group that caused us to want to protect each other and keep each other safe and look after each other. Like when you're on a football field, your team's got your back. You've got your team members' backs. You guys care about each other. You don't want your other team members to be hurt or anything bad to happen. But fundamentally, it's a reality that we're living in. And so this love is the most powerful frequency. People are interested in developing occult powers. Yeah. They want to develop all these occult powers. They don't realize these powers are living within the heart of love. If you really want to develop your spiritual abilities and your spiritual powers, you're going to do so by embracing love more fully. The deeper we get into love, the more lucid we become, because the lucidity of the love programs the pineal gland. The pineal gland's light gets brighter. The more we experience love, the more enlightened we become. The more lucid this experience of reality becomes. And then we can truly say that we are lucid dreaming this world into being. Until we are experiencing a full state of love and the compassion, which is the component of love. Fundamental component of love is compassion. Because when we are truly in love, we wish to manage our passions. Because we wish for our passions not to cause harm to those that we love. And because we wish for our passions not to cause harm for those that we love, we carefully manage our passions in order to try and be the best that we can be for the ones that we love. And so this selflessness, which is so fundamental to love, is what we speak about on the spiritual path, developing the abilities of integrity, developing the abilities of sacrifice. These are all selfless. And sacrifice, the word sacred, sakri, right? Sacred, red sack, has to do with sacrificing yourself for the group. And so these ideas are rather fundamental. It seems like my camera unplugged. So give me a moment while I just take a look at what's happened here and try and understand what's going on. Seems like my camera just stopped working. So maybe I can shift my camera, change it, try and get it to operate. No, she doesn't want to work. Well, I suppose that's nature's way of saying that it's time for us to get to the point of closing off this discussion. And it went for longer than an hour. Oh, there we go. It's a different camera. There we go. The other camera is working. So yeah, and that's really where I wanted to get to explain and put into perspective the nature of this reality, the nature of this lucid experience that we're living through, and just how fundamentally important this love component is. We don't realize that love is really the key to wisdom. It's the key to growth. It's the key to healing. And love, there's been a lot written about, oh, you must love yourself. I don't think you must love yourself. I think you must just love. Whatever you feel towards others, you will feel towards yourself. If you walk past a bee and you love that bee, if you walk past a spider and you love that spider, if you walk past a human and you love that human, if you walk past an animal and you love that animal, if you walk past a tree and you love that tree, if you walk past the sky and you love the sky and you love the earth under your feet and you love the microbes in the soil and you love the life coming out of that, you look at the sun, you love the sun because it's giving all this life force, and you love every human being that you come in contact with, then there'll be this continual flow of lucidity, and your pineal gland will be producing more light, and then the lucid dreaming of reality can become an eventuality, because the dream time isn't necessarily we're not necessarily lucid, and lucidity isn't necessarily equitable, or you can't equate it specifically to being objective. But I think lucidity is where you can find the harmony and the balance between objectivity and subjectivity, because this subjective experience of reality is very much an objective phenomenon that we're living through. And so, yeah, love is the key. It conquers all weakness. It conquers all fear. If you're afraid and you go into a state of love, yeah, big yes, completely. You go into a state of love. That is the most potent vibration in the universe. True occult therapeutics, true spiritual power and knowledge is about love. And the greatest teachers have tried to teach us this. Compassion. Why the Buddha teaches compassion as a path? Because compassion leads us to love. Compassion is the way towards love. When you practice compassion and you try and adhere to becoming more compassionate, you automatically become more loving. And that love produces that pineal gland resonant frequencies of consciousness that awakens us. And that enlightenment, as I say, and I'm pretty sure about this, is actually a light. When you're in deep meditation, you can literally, you'll notice your eyes go like they roll a bit. Like certain deep states of meditation, you forget about your body. You come back in your body and you go, hey, my eyes are pointing backwards. What the hell? And you go, hold on. Okay. My body knows what it's doing. Just leave the eyes. And the eyes like roll back in the head. And then you notice, wow, all this light show I'm watching, because there's so much light. And you start thinking, well, first you think it's a mental phenomenon, it's this and that. At some point you start realizing, hold on, I'm actually looking into my head. And I'm looking through a light portal into another reality. And the light portal that I'm looking into, there's like a little light projection, like a screen in your mind, created by light. And you're looking into that light. And by looking into that light, you start to see through the spectrum of consciousness, which is emanating that light through the acoustic resonant field. So I'm going to leave this conversation at that point. I'm going to say thank you all for joining. I hope you got what you came for. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Remember, we're dreaming this reality. Allow that dreaming experience to be a lucid one. Become conscious of the experience. And big blessings and peace to all of you. I hope you all find love. And tell Elon to leave you alone. Alone, leave him alone. Alone, did you hear that? Big love to you, dear Lauren. Much blessings, peace, honor, and respect to the whole of the kingdom, and to all of you beautiful people. Thank you guys for coming to enjoy, and it was a real honor having you guys here. I'm really sorry Chris wasn't here. I was looking forward to Chris being here. It was his idea to do this, and so TruthSayer Studios Presents Unscripted is another show that's going to be popping up from time to time. And yeah, take it easy. Don't forget to smile. The more we smile, the more the brain contracts, because the pressure on the side of the head has a gentle massaging effect on the pineal and pituitary glands. So smiling generates light, generates this love, generates this joy, generates this consciousness that will take us into a deeper and more profound state of awareness and experience, so that this dream of reality can become a more lucid one. This is the BushWhisperer coming at you from the southern tip of Africa, Cape Town, Simonstown, Seaforth. All the love in the world. Blessed be. Om Shanti.